Hey y'all, welcome to the Foreclosure Fix Podcast, where our goal is to help 1 million homeowners successfully navigate foreclosure. I'm your host, DJ Alojo, and I am looking forward to today's podcast episode. If you do not know, we have a new book out called The Foreclosure Fix, 12 proven steps to beat the bank, escape foreclosure, and turn your property into a profitable asset. Definitely be sure to grab a copy and like and subscribe. It helps the algorithm and helps homeowners who may be facing foreclosure. On today's podcast, we are talking about why the bank is not going away. And I'm with my friend and my good buddy, Jerry Sanders. Jerry, welcome to the podcast. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, DJ. Glad to be here.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with our audience, our listeners. And for those of you who are not familiar with Jerry, he is a true professional. He has been in the real estate industry for quite a time, has done everything from being a landlord. I know he's flipped some properties, and he's also a note investor. And he is the bank in many locations, right? And so he has great experience and great background with him and his team working with homeowners who are facing foreclosure and helping them get to win-win resolutions. And one of the things that he and I were talking about at a recent conference at Diversified Mortgage Expo was why so many homeowners have their head in the sand, and why they think that the bank is just going to go away if they ignore the mail, the calls, and everything else. And so in today's podcast, he wants to kind of provide homeowners who face foreclosure some insight and what to do when the bank comes calling. And so, Jerry, do me a favor and just let our listeners know kind of at a very high level how you and your company interact with homeowners who are facing foreclosure.
Sure. We, as you know, DJ, we buy non-performing notes, and we buy them all over the country. What we try to do, our goal is to make sure a homeowner stays in their home. You know, we are not trying to take a home. We're not trying to foreclose, all this other kind of stuff. We want to be able to come up with a solution that keeps people in their homes, and also so that we make some money. And as a bank, we make money by collecting payments. So that's First Shield. That's what we try to do. I think we're pretty successful at it. We go that extra mile. And typically what I tell borrowers is I am the borrower advocacy manager. So I'm going to be doing whatever I can on your behalf to come up with a solution to help you stay in your house.
Well, there's a couple of things that I want to unpack there just for our listeners who don't know kind of the terminology. So Jerry said non-performing loan, right? And it sounds very simple on the surface. A non-performing loan is just a loan that's not paying. So someone has not paid on that loan. And so it goes from performing when someone is paying to non-performing, right? And so Jerry's company buys those loans that are non-performing. And so you're buying loans where people have not paid for months, weeks, maybe even years, right?
Yeah, I know one of the notes we bought, the borrower hadn't paid in 10 years.
Wow.
So
a decade.
Yeah. And, you know, we came up with a plan.
Okay. So, Jerry, walk our listeners through what that process looks like. And I know for folks who may be in the industry, you know how it goes, right? But if I'm a homeowner, I haven't paid for 10 years. I'm in la la land. I think the note's gone. I mean, I think the loan is gone. There's nothing anybody's doing. That thing's long gone. It's been 10 years. And then all of a sudden, you know, you come a knocking. So help us understand that process and help our listeners understand what that looks like for them when the bank comes calling.
Absolutely. So when we buy a note, the first thing that happens is the loan company, the mortgage company, whoever that used to own that note, sends a letter out to the borrower, letting them know the loan has been sold. So, you know, you're going to see a name that's familiar to you. So you know that you're not getting scammed. The next thing, about 15 days later, you get a letter from us. It basically says the same thing that the former lender said, but it gives you, you know, contact information, phone numbers, where to mail your payments, what your payments are, all that kind of stuff. So now you know, yep, we're legit. These are the folks that are supposed to be handling your mortgage. Then we will start, once that happens, you know, there's some statutory requirement that we got to, you know, give you like 15 days or so before we can start talking to you. Then we will start calling. We'll call, we'll send emails to try to get your attention, to get you to respond to us. We'll even, put you on a sequence where we start sending letters. Again, just reminding you, we're here. We want you to pay. Give us a call so we can kind of work out something. And that is the cycle that we go through. We escalate over time, and eventually, if a borrower doesn't communicate with us, we will probably send a demand letter, and at worst case, we'll start the foreclosure process.
So at what point will you all just stop and just say, oh, this person, is not responding. I'll just leave them alone.
We don't do that. That wasn't the point.
Okay. Yeah. So you're telling me if I'm a homeowner and Jerry is calling me and I just keep on hanging up on Jerry, or I keep on sending him the voicemail, you won't just go away? If I block your number, you're still going to keep calling me?
The worst thing you can do is block the number. We had one guy, it's a note that we're working on as we speak. We went through that process, and, we started sending him letters or phone calls a whole bit. One day he actually did pick up the phone and, he answered the phone and he goes, no, this is the wrong Gene. So you could please stop sending me letters and calling me. This is the wrong Gene. And it's like, dude, we're sending the letters to the house that has the mortgage on it. So you can pretend that you're not the right person all day long, but I'm not going away. And by saying that you're not the right Gene, I know you are.
I'm saying I'm not the right DJ. So, I'm sending you Jerry. So I highlight that point and I ask those questions and we're laughing about it. And I know that for the folks on the other end who are getting the letters, it's not funny. But I think that you have to look at it from the lender's perspective, where, as you said before, we're not in this, you're not in this, your company doesn't exist. The employees that you have, the investors that you have, they're not in this just to, smile. They're in this to make a profit. And like you said, the way the bank makes a profit is by collecting payments. And so if they purchase something, they intend to make that profit. And so for the homeowners out there who are thinking through this in their head of like, what do I do? How do I navigate this situation? Mm-hmm. One thing we always like to say is ignoring it does not help. The bank will not go away. And so that's, why we're joking about it, because this happens all the time that people get mail, they get letters. And what I always tell folks is that if somebody sends you a piece of mail and it's certified, they're sending it to you for a reason. They want you to get it, because if you're sending out mass marketing, you're not sending it certified because you're not paying that additional $3-4, for somebody to have the signature confirmation and for, the postal person to be able to scan it and say, they delivered it. And so if it's certified, you may want to take some time and open it because they want to get to you.
Yeah. We've done everything that we can to get your attention, and we are trying to get your attention. As you mentioned, the certified letter, it costs money. To send a certified letter, I have to drive over to the post office, stand in line for 15 minutes to send you a letter. So that means I'm serious. I'm not going to go away. I really do want to try to contact you. The problem with the borrowers have is that when you ignore it, it just keeps building. And if you get the letter and it gives you a phone number, call. At a minimum, start the conversation, start the dialogue. Tell me I can't afford it, and then we'll work out something. But
it's funny because what I always like to tell folks that banks have emotions too, right? and what I mean by that is obviously banks are institutions and lenders are typically LLCs and companies, but no one likes to be jerked around. Nobody likes to be played with. And it's very frustrating when you have those borrowers who play around with you, where they'll act like they're trying to engage with you, but they're not really engaging. Or their engagement tactics are just stall tactics. When
Yeah.
that happens to you, what disposition do you take as the lender?
Well, you get annoyed. So I'll give you an example. Like I said, we escalate. But one of our escalation techniques, after we've sent letters to you, I will actually send somebody out and knock on your door. Knock on your door, put the letter in your hand. So not just send it certified. So there's some guy that shows up at your house, says, "Hi, I'm from First Shield. I have a letter here. They want to talk to you." And so I'm doing that to get your attention. Now, I've had cases where people have been very polite. A lot of times they're very polite with that door knocker. And the door knocker leaves, they close the door, we never hear from them. So yes, I get annoyed because I'm spending money to try to get your attention. And oh, by the way, ultimately, the borrower winds up having to pay for that guy that knocked on the door.
Yeah.
So it is very annoying. It's and it will get to, and when I say it escalates, one of the problems that borrowers will have is that if I do go to foreclosure, because I've had to hire a lawyer, I can't easily stop the process. So we want to do everything that we can to mitigate getting to that point.
Gotcha. So help our listeners understand, you said something there that was intriguing, that if you do escalate and you hire an attorney to start the foreclosure process, you can't easily stop the process. Help our listeners understand what you mean by that and what that costs them.
Okay. So most people have not read their mortgage. And I'll be honest, before I got in this business, I never read one of my mortgages either.
I'm guilty as well. I was just happily signing. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah, somebody gave me a loan, so I'm good. So, but in that loan, about 3/4 of the way down the first page or the second page, it says that the borrower is going to pay all the legal fees for collection. So that means that they're going to pay their legal fees and they're going to pay the bank's legal fees. So that's part of that is part of the issue and part of the reason why we say we don't want to try to go to foreclosure, because if you can't afford the mortgage, you can't afford the legal fees either. So those are going to be part of the process. So that's one of my issues. The other is if I have a situation where I do take it to foreclosure, there is a legal process, and that legal process has gates and responsibilities and things that happen, and I must meet those requirements in order to be able to foreclose. So if I have to, let's say a good example, if it's a property in North Carolina, after I send you my notice of demand, I have 45 days before I can do anything. But then day 46, I must start doing something, because the courts will get upset with me, the lender, if I don't do what I'm supposed to do. So I must do that next step. And then once that step starts, then the courts start another clock. And then that clock says, after X many days, then there's another step that I'm supposed to do. So that's what I mean by it's not easy for me to stop, because the courts have a process or a legal process must be done in order to foreclose. And I must follow those rules.
Yeah. The other thing too, and I think you alluded to this, but didn't explicitly say it, is that with each of those steps comes additional cost. And so if you want to start talking to me and I'm in the middle of a step, even if the attorney hasn't filed the documents, but they drafted the documents, you're still paying for those documents that they drafted, right? Because that's an expense that's going to come. And so, we all know attorneys like to bill a certain type of way. And so, if they're thinking about your case at 3 a.m. in the morning and charging $600 an hour, you don't want to be that borrower who's getting stuck with that deal.
Yeah, that's true. That is absolutely true. So if you wait until the lawyers get involved, realize that you're paying for two lawyers. You're paying for my lawyer and you're paying for your lawyer. So you need to talk to us before then so that we don't get into that situation. And, 100% the same,
No, 100%. One of the things I was going to ask you about, Jerry, because I've seen this a lot, is maybe let our listeners know about, how difficult it is for you to get a modification done for a homeowner. And when I say how difficult it is how many of them actually get to the finish line, although you may send the paperwork?
Okay. So for a mod, so I can do a modification easily. We have when we buy a loan, we have the ability, because we're the bank, we can change how much you owe. We can change the interest rate. We can make it longer. Everybody thinks a 30-year mortgage is the most you can do. I can make it 45 years if I wanted to. So we can do things to help the homeowner, reduce their payment. So all of those things can be put together into a loan mod, and then you're off to the races. Now, one of the things that will happen, though, we will not give a loan mod on the first call. What we will typically do is come up with a temporary plan to get people back into the habit of paying every month. And then at the end of that temporary payment plan, then we'll modify the loan. I have no problem with it at all. I actually love to modify the loans.
How many times when you talk about a temporary payment plan or stuff like that, do you actually get somebody to go through with it? So, for example, one of the things that we find is that, we have people that we work with, and our modifications, we'll mod them from the start. I know some people like temporary payment, but we'll mod them from the start if they come with a big enough down payment. So if they come with a sizable down payment, we'll mod it from the start. But what I've seen from some folks is some folks come with a down payment and they call you gun ho. I want to pay this right now. I'm ready to pay. Who do I call? Who do I send the money to? And we're like, hold up, wait a second. You're not trying to pay a full reinstatement, right? You're trying to pay, we can't collect money unless you're reinstating. But one of the things that I see is that we'll draft the modification paperwork, send it to them, give them a deadline, and then it sits for days. And then they go ghost, you lose contact with them, or it's a situation where they call you after the deadline for the modification, like, hey, is this still good? So how often do you see that happen to you? Because for us, it happens, about 35% of the time.
Yeah. Good question. I'm going to say it probably happens to us half the time. And, and the reason is because a lot of folks are just trying to push the ball down the court. They're not seriously interested yet at getting the loan back reinstated. Again, getting back to your head's still in the sand. You think that by telling me that you're going to do the mod or telling me you're going to do the temporary payment plan, that's enough. But remember, I'm in the business to collect payments. So if you've come up with an agreement with me that says you're going to pay me, I'm looking forward to getting those payments. And so if mentally you're not ready to make the jump, understand that just by telling me that you are signing some paperwork and then not coming through, that does not help you. And actually, it'll put you in a worse situation because, as DJ said, as banks or bankers, we are still human. So if I feel that you have been just trying to play me, then the next time we have a conversation, what's going on in the back of my head is you're playing me. And, you're telling me what you think I want to hear, as opposed to telling me what you're going to do.
Listeners, y'all have learned a lesson. Don't play with Jerry. He's not the one to play with, right? Well, Jerry, man, I appreciate you sharing that content and information with our listeners. This brings me to my favorite part of the podcast, which is our bow tie round. It's where our listeners get to tie one on with our guest, Jerry Sanders. All right. The B in bow tie stands for your best advice for somebody facing foreclosure. The O stands for one thing you're grateful for. And the W stands for your wildest or most interesting foreclosure related story. So B, what is your best advice for somebody facing foreclosure?
My best advice is to contact the lender as soon as possible. Start the conversation and work with the lender to figure out a way to come up with a payment that you can afford for the duration of the loan.
Awesome. One thing you're grateful for?
I am grateful for the opportunity to be able to do this, to be able to help people, to be able to provide for my family by doing it. At some point, one of the things that I'm going to be putting on my website are some of the testimonials from some of the folks that have paid off their loans. Because it feels good when you hear people say, if it wasn't for you, I would have lost my house. That, I can't, And when you think about it, for most of us, our houses are the bulk of our wealth. And, it takes years, decades to be able to build that up and to be able to say, yeah, I still have my house because you let me stay in it and you helped me figure it out.
Man, that's an awesome feeling, man. And I think it's the same reason why we have the Foreclosure Fix family. It's try to help people who find themselves in situations they never expected, but are good people. And there's a solution. You just got to get the right help.
Yeah.
Your wildest or most interesting foreclosure related story. And I know you have a lot of them, but we want the wildest or most interesting.
Yeah, the wildest. Well, there's the one that everybody hears about is the DC. So I'm not going to do the DC one. If you want to hear about the DC one, you're going to have to look at another podcast. I'll talk about one that we did in Louisiana. This is a woman, family home. Again, one of those that hadn't paid in, maybe 4 or 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. We worked with them, temporary payment plans, all this other kind of stuff. None of that worked. They just kept falling off the ladder. It just didn't work. So finally, we start the foreclosure. And, we're going through all of the steps. The courts get us to do what we're supposed to do. And the borrower finally, and just before all of the foreclosures, the borrower had ghosted me. So they weren't returning my phone calls. They weren't, I thought we had a good report. None of that was working. So we go to foreclosure. Now the borrower's starting to call. What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And again, remember I said, we had a temporary payment plan. You fell off several times. Then you ghosted me. DJ said, don't mess with Jerry. So, it's like you're playing me. So I'm not really believing you. It's like, can you stop the foreclosure? Can you stop the foreclosure? I can't do anything. So, she keeps calling. We're getting closer and closer and closer to the sheriff's sale. Finally, 48 hours before the sheriff's sale, she calls me up on my cell phone. It's like middle of the evening. I'm at home. Hey, I got some guy on the phone here. And he said he's going to pay off my loan. It's like, well, I don't believe you anymore. And the foreclosure is now 36 hours away. She goes, well, I got the money. What do you want me to do? I said, well, call the lawyers. Again, I don't believe you. So next morning, I get up and I see this email from the law firm that says, stop foreclosure. I have no idea what that means. And true enough, she had wired the entire amount of money to the law firm to stop the foreclosure.
Why?
And I sit back and I go, why did you wait that long? That's the ultimate in at the courthouse steps. Because if you hadn't gotten through to the law firm, the house was going to be gone. But, they wired the money. I was real happy, obviously. But, that's one of the wilder ones.
No, man, it's interesting how the pressure of a foreclosure brings about resolutions that would ultimately never come to pass if it was not out there. I've seen that happen numerous times, both in person where somebody's coming to the courthouse with cashier's checks to pay the lender, now a buyer, the homeowner, I got the money right here, stop the foreclosure. Whoa, are you serious? Where was this a long time ago?
Yeah.
Well, that is an amazing story I'm thankful for a great ending on it, right? That it is, and that it didn't sell. Jerry, again, we appreciate you coming to the podcast and helping our listeners understand the mindset of a bank and letting them know that the bank is not going away. Do me a favor and let our listeners know how they can kind of follow your journey. I know you also have a podcast too, so please make sure you let them know about that.
So if you want to find out more about what we do, you can go to our website, www.firstshieldfinancial.com, or you can find out a little bit more about us through some of our podcasts as well. And we are on YouTube. It's a Kim and Jerry podcast. Again, First Shield Financial, or incredible_returns, at incredible_returns. You'll see what we do, and would love to talk to folks about what we're doing in the note space, and hopefully we can help some folks stay in their places.
Awesome, man. Well, that brings us to the end of another podcast. As I said before, if you are not subscribed, please do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. It helps the algorithm and it helps us reach our target audience, which are homeowners who may be facing foreclosure. As always, I appreciate you for listening. Thank you so much. I see you, Jerry, with the book. I appreciate it. I love you. God bless you. We will see you soon. The views and opinions on this podcast are for informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal advice. If you have a specific legal question, we highly recommend you contact a qualified legal professional.